Mongooses were supposed to be the perfect solution to a deadly snake problem.
Next, for years, scientists have been trying to reverse the terrible toll that snake bites have on societies in tropical regions.
But the plan went terribly wrong. In 1979, Japanese authorities released 30 mongooses on Amami Oshima Island to combat the habu snake, a poisonous pit viper responsible for approximately 400 bites and several deaths in 1980 alone. What started as a well-intentioned ecological intervention quickly transformed into an environmental disaster.
Meanwhile, a new study has revealed that venomous snakes will be migrating soon to different regions. The concerning effect is attributed to severe changes of global warming.
Now, after 25 years, the truth is out. So, here's my advice. Do not click away, because the twist in this story is the kind of thing that makes you question everything. Come along. The snake problem that sparked a radical plan. Amami Oshima Island faced a serious public health crisis long before the mongoose introduction. The venomous habu snake, Trimeresurus flavoviridis, threatened local residents for generations, creating a climate of fear that eventually prompted officials to take drastic action. The habu snake presented a genuine danger to inhabitants of Amami Oshima Island. This aggressive pit viper, endemic to certain islands of the Amami and Ryukyu groups, inflicted serious injuries through its potent venom. Over a 5-year period, between 1972 and 1976, officials documented 1,285 habu snake bites across Tokunoshima and Amami Oshima Islands. These attacks resulted in 11 deaths, establishing a fatality rate of 0.86%. Furthermore, victims who suffered a second habu bite faced a significantly higher mortality rate of approximately 11%. The geographic distribution of snake attacks varied considerably across different communities. While Nace City recorded the lowest incidence rate at 1.39 bites per thousand residents, Eisentown experienced a staggering 35.83 bites per thousand inhabitants. Such statistics underscored the severity of the threat, particularly in farming communities. Medical experts noted that although deaths remained relatively rare, the venom caused extensive tissue necrosis at bite sites, resulting in serious injuries. The snake's aggressive nature made it particularly feared among local populations. Most attacks, which has been recorded to be 98%, targeted victims' extremities, specifically hands and feet, suggesting that protective measures like leather boots might prevent many incidents. Seasonal patterns emerged in attack frequency as well. Contrary to expectations, the highest number of bites occurred not during August's peak heat, as one might expect for cold-blooded reptiles, yet rather during June's rainy season. This correlation between precipitation and attack frequency complicated prevention efforts. Against this backdrop of ongoing snake attacks, authorities sought an innovative solution. The mongoose, specifically the small Indian mongoose, Herpestis auropunctatus, had developed a global reputation as an effective snake killer. Previously, officials had introduced mongooses to Okinawa Island in 1910 to address similar concerns about habu snakes and rats. The mongoose plan appeared scientifically sound at first glance. These small, agile mammals were known for their ability to fight and kill venomous snakes. Additionally, they could potentially control the black rat population, which had been damaging sugarcane crops throughout the region. This dual-purpose solution seemed elegant: introduce a natural predator that could address both agricultural pests and dangerous snakes simultaneously. In 1979, approximately 30 mongooses were transported from Okinawa Island and released near Asani Akasaki in Naze City, now part of Amami City. The release location was strategically selected to maximize the animal's impact on snake populations in areas with high bite incidence. However, the plan contained a fundamental flaw that officials overlooked. The mongoose and habu snake operated on entirely different schedules. Mongooses are diurnal, active during daylight hours, whereas habu snakes are primarily nocturnal hunters. Consequently, despite their reputation as snake killers, the mongooses rarely encountered their intended targets. Moreover, the plan lacked basic ecological research. no one had adequately studied how these non-native predators would interact with the broader ecosystem. Scientists failed to consider that, without natural enemies on the island, the mongoose population would multiply rapidly. Initially, both public and governmental responses to the mongoose introduction were optimistic. Communities suffering from snake bites and agricultural losses welcomed the potential solution. There were high hopes for what the agile mongooses could accomplish against the venomous snakes. The introduction aligned with contemporary pest management approaches that emphasized biological control methods over chemical alternatives. Government officials from both local municipalities and the National Environment Agency, which was later reorganized as the Ministry of Environment, supported the release. The effort represented a continuation of earlier biological control strategies, following the pattern established with the 1910 mongoose introduction on Okinawa Island. However, this optimism soon faded as the unintended consequences became apparent. By the early 1990s, agricultural and livestock producers began reporting damage caused by the growing mongoose population. The introduced predators, finding few opportunities to encounter habu snakes, turned their attention to more accessible prey. Municipal governments responded by initiating mongoose captures in 1993, classifying them as harmful wildlife. This marked a significant shift in official policy, from introducing the animals as beneficial to targeting them for removal just 14 years later. The Environment Agency and Kagoshima Prefecture launched a 4-year model project in 1996 to investigate the mongoose distribution and develop capture methods. This study revealed disturbing ecological changes. The mongooses had expanded their range considerably, and native species, particularly the endemic Amami rabbit, were disappearing from areas where mongooses had established populations. These findings prompted the Environment Agency and Kagoshima Prefecture to commence a more aggressive eradication project in 2000. The initiative initially operated as an incentive program, providing payments based on the number of mongooses captured. However, authorities soon recognized that this approach would not effectively reduce the mongoose population, especially in forested areas away from roads. The growing ecological crisis ultimately led to the 2005 enactment of the Invasive Alien Species Act, under which mongooses were officially designated as a harmful invasive species. This legislative action formalized the complete reversal in governmental approach, from intentional introduction to targeted elimination. Perfect. Let's stretch that line out so it feels like the narrator is really pulling the audience in, teasing them with suspense, and setting them up to lean forward for the next part. Here's a much longer, humanized version of your sentence. That's how massive and dramatic the reversal really was, a complete U-turn that nobody saw coming. It wasn't just policy shifting. It was a whole mindset crumbling under the weight of reality. And trust me, this is exactly where the story takes a sharp, almost shocking turn. One so full of irony and miscalculation that it still echoes years later in the way experts talk about invasive species. It's the kind of twist that makes you pause and think, how did they get it this wrong in the first place? But here's the thing, you haven't even heard the wildest part yet. What comes next is the heart of the saga, and once you hear it, you'll understand why this episode has gone down as one of the most jaw-dropping blunders in environmental history. So don't even think about clicking away, because the twist you're about to discover in The Mongoose Miscalculation will keep you hooked until the very last detail, and believe me, you won't want to miss a single second of it. The Mongoose Miscalculation. The fatal flaw in Japan's mongoose introduction plan surfaced as the eager predators settled into their new island home. What seemed like a perfect ecological solution unraveled into a textbook example of invasive species damage, stemming from a fundamental misunderstanding of basic animal behavior. The mongoose introduction plan collapsed due to a simple yet critical oversight. Mongooses and habu snakes operate on entirely different schedules. Mongooses are diurnal creatures, actively hunting during daylight hours, whereas habu snakes are nocturnal predators that emerge after dark. This timing mismatch meant the two species rarely encountered each other, The mongooses were sleeping precisely when the snakes became active. The small Indian mongoose, native to South Asia, had earned its reputation as a skilled snake killer through documented battles with cobras in its native range. Their agility and speed allow them to dodge snake strikes with remarkable precision. Even more impressive is the mongoose's natural resistance to snake venom, possessing specialized receptors that reduce the potency of neurotoxins, essentially functioning as invisible armor against venomous bites. In controlled settings, these abilities were readily apparent. Locals in Okinawa occasionally staged fights between mongooses and habu snakes as entertainment, with the mongoose typically emerging victorious. As one observer noted, the snake relies on quickness, venom, and constricture to win the fight, while the mongoose is cunning, lightning quick, and possesses a sharp set of teeth. Nevertheless, beyond these staged encounters, the natural behavioral patterns of both species made their interactions in the wild exceedingly rare. In some regions where mongooses had been established longer, officials eventually replaced actual mongoose-snake fights with swimming races between the species as the real battles were deemed inhumane. The mongoose introduction represented a profound scientific miscalculation rooted in insufficient research. Officials released the predators with high hopes, despite a lack of basic research about how these animals would interact with the island ecosystem. This oversight proved catastrophic for several reasons. First, the time-of-day activity mismatch meant the mongooses and snakes rarely encountered each other in natural settings. The mongooses were simply not awake when the habu snakes were hunting. Second, ecological science clearly demonstrates that introducing foreign predators without natural enemies leads to explosive population growth. The mongoose population on Amami Oshima expanded from approximately 30 animals in 1979 to around 10,000 by the year 2000, a staggering 33,233% increase over 2 decades. Third, the plan ignored a fundamental principle of predator behavior: energy conservation. Snakes represent dangerous, difficult prey that fight back, requiring significant effort and posing injury risks even to mongoose. When presented with easier alternatives, the mongooses made the predictable choice. They targeted defenseless native species instead of the dangerous habu. As one analysis explained, mongooses proliferated by preying on Amami rabbits and rare long-haired rats instead of habu as intended. This behavior parallels other failed biological control attempts worldwide, such as introducing cane toads to Australia to control sugarcane beetles. Underlying these specific failures was a broader scientific oversight, introducing a non-native predator to an isolated island ecosystem that had evolved without mammalian predators. Many of Amami Oshima's unique species had developed over thousands of years without defenses against such hunters, rendering them particularly vulnerable to the mongoose invasion. Was there any warning signs of ecological trouble? The warning signs appeared within the first 2 decades following the mongoose introduction. As the predator population expanded across Amami Oshima, they left a trail of ecological disruption behind them. The initial and most obvious indicator was the mongoose population explosion itself. By reaching approximately 10,000 individuals by 2000, the invasive species had clearly found abundant food sources, just not the intended habu snakes. This rapid growth signaled that the mongooses were successfully hunting alternative prey. Subsequent analysis of stomach contents and fecal samples from the mongooses confirmed the worst fears. These examinations revealed remains of endangered native animals, including the Amami rabbit and Amami spiny rats. Additionally, the mongooses were preying on amphibians such as Amami Ishikawa's frogs and reptiles like the Okinawa tree lizard. Perhaps most concerning was the impact on the Amami rabbit, Pentalagus furnesi, a species found nowhere else on Earth and considered a living fossil due to its ancient lineage. The rabbit's population plummeted as the mongooses spread across the island. Often called a natural treasure of Japan, the rabbit had no evolutionary defenses against these new predators. The situation mirrored what had happened decades earlier on Okinawa Island. There, mongooses introduced in 1910 eventually spread northward, reaching the Yambaru region by the 1990s. Studies there documented negative impacts on 3 endemic bird species, with the flightless Okinawa rail most severely affected due to its ground-dwelling habits. On Amami Oshima, the ecological damage expanded beyond direct predation. The mongooses disrupted delicate food webs, causing ripple effects throughout the ecosystem. Native bird populations declined as mongooses consumed their eggs and young. The Amami spiny rat, another species found nowhere else on Earth, experienced similar population crashes. By the early 1990s, scientists and local officials could no longer ignore the evidence. The snake killers had transformed into ecosystem destroyers. The mongooses had completely failed at their intended purpose while successfully devastating the island's unique biodiversity. In response, municipal governments began classifying mongooses as harmful wildlife and initiated capture programs in 1993. Nevertheless, the damage continued to spread. From analysis of mongoose stomach contents, scientists determined that the populations of such native species on Amami Oshima decreased as the mongoose population increased. The connection was undeniable. The mongoose introduction represented an ecological disaster in progress. The situation underscored a painful lesson. Once an invasive species establishes itself, removal becomes extraordinarily difficult and expensive. The initial decision to release 30 mongooses had set in motion an ecological catastrophe that would eventually require decades of intensive effort and millions of dollars to address. In 2005, Japan enacted the Invasive Alien Species Act, officially designating the small Indian mongoose as an invasive alien species. This formal recognition came 26 years after the initial release, after immense ecological damage had already occurred. The designation represented an explicit acknowledgement that the snake control plan had backfired spectacularly. Think about that for a second. A plan meant to solve one problem ended up opening the door to a much bigger disaster. And trust me, this is where the story really takes a turn, because the ecological fallout that followed was nothing short of catastrophic. Stay with me till the very end, because once you hear how nature itself tried to fight back and the ripple effects it caused, you'll see why this became one of the most infamous ecological blunders in history. The ecological fallout. The release of mongooses on Amami Oshima Island created ripple effects throughout the delicate ecosystem, devastating unique species and altering natural balance in ways that would take decades to repair. As the mongoose population exploded from just 30 animals to approximately 10,000 by 2000, the ecological consequences became increasingly apparent. Perhaps no species suffered more dramatically than the Amami rabbit, Pentalagus furnesi, a living fossil found nowhere else on Earth. These endemic rabbits faced immediate pressure as mongooses spread across the island. Stomach content and fecal sample analyses from captured mongooses revealed disturbing evidence. 8% of mongoose pellets contained traces of Amami rabbit. Even more concerning, the invasive predators created a genetic crisis for the rabbit population. Genetic studies confirmed that the once continuous rabbit population had fractured into 2 isolated groups, a north isolated population, Ni, and a south large population, SL. This fragmentation occurred directly along mongoose invasion routes. Scientists documented that the isolated northern population suffered significantly reduced genetic diversity compared to the southern population. DNA analysis revealed alarming genetic differences between these populations, indicating severe disruption to gene flow that threatened the species' long-term survival. Yet rabbits weren't the only victims. The mongoose's diet varied seasonally. They primarily consumed insects and birds year-round, but targeted amphibians and reptiles more frequently during summer months, switching to mammals during winter. Native amphibians like the Amami Ishikawa's frog and Oton frog faced devastating predation pressure. alongside endemic reptiles such as the Okinawa tree lizard. The Amami spiny rat and Ryukyu long-furred rat similarly experienced population crashes. Birds suffered equally, with mongoose invasion directly linked to population declines in the purple jay, Garrulus lidthi, and Ryukyu robin, Erithacus commodori. Statistical analysis confirmed these species decreased specifically in areas with high mongoose capture rates, yet remained stable elsewhere. Their ground-feeding habits made them especially vulnerable, unlike canopy-dwelling species like woodpeckers and bulbuls that largely escaped predation. The mongoose invasion triggered ecosystem breakdown through direct and indirect pathways. Beyond direct predation, the mongooses fundamentally altered ecological relationships that had evolved over thousands of years. Native species disappeared entirely from areas where mongooses established dense populations. The ecological collapse extended beyond wildlife into agriculture. Economic losses from mongoose damage to crops increased at an alarming rate, from approximately $7,000 in 1994 to $110,000 in 1996-1997. Farmers reported extensive damage to taro, sweet potatoes, melons, watermelons, and loquats. The mongooses also attacked poultry, creating additional economic hardship for island residents. This agricultural damage represented a cruel irony. The mongooses had been introduced partly to control rats damaging sugarcane crops, yet ultimately created far worse agricultural losses themselves. From 1994 to 1999, documented crop damage increased by over 1,000%, forcing some farmers to trap mongooses independently even before official control programs began. The ecological disruption followed predictable patterns documented in mongoose-invaded areas elsewhere. On Okinawa Island, where mongooses had been introduced earlier in 1910, similar patterns emerged. There, the flightless Okinawa rail, Gallerallus okinawae, disappeared entirely from regions where mongooses became established. This pattern of local extinction repeated across multiple endemic species on both islands. Most troubling was how the mongoose invasion created a cascade of ecological effects. As original prey species declined, mongooses adapted by targeting new food sources, creating widening circles of ecological damage. According to the Ministry of the Environment, animals on Amami Oshima became afraid of mongooses, with native frogs, rats, and other animals vanishing from areas where mongooses expanded. All these kept happening until a public awareness and alarm was rung out. How did it all happen? Scientific concern mounted gradually as evidence of ecological damage accumulated. The Amami Ornithologists Club began conducting annual censuses of the Amami thrush in 1994, documenting troubling population declines that coincided with mongoose expansion. Their decades-long monitoring created an irrefutable record of ecosystem degradation. In response to growing evidence, municipal governments began classifying mongooses as harmful wildlife in 1993, marking an official reversal in policy just 14 years after their introduction. The Environment Agency and Kagoshima Prefecture launched a 4-year model project in 1996 to investigate mongoose distribution and develop capture methods. Their findings confirmed suspicions mongoose predation was decimating endemic wildlife across the island. Nonetheless, public awareness of broader environmental issues remained surprisingly low in Japan. A 2023 survey by polling company Ipsos found that just 40% of Japanese respondents agreed individuals needed to act on climate change, the lowest percentage among 32 surveyed countries. Even more striking, Japan showed a 19% drop in climate concern between 2021 and 2025, the steepest decline among 26 nations. This broader context of environmental apathy likely contributed to the initial lack of urgent action against mongoose invasion. Only after mounting scientific evidence of ecological collapse did public sentiment shift decisively toward eradication efforts. The Ministry of Environment ultimately launched a full-scale mongoose eradication project in 2000, recognizing that without intervention, certain species faced imminent extinction from Amami Oshima. The scientific consensus became clear that if left unchecked, the mongooses would permanently alter Amami Oshima's unique biodiversity. This realization prompted formation of a specialized eradication team and launched what would become a 25-year battle to undo the damage from introducing just 30 animals in 1979, the 25-year eradication effort. After acknowledging the ecological disaster, Japan launched what would become one of the world's most ambitious invasive species removal programs. The mongoose eradication campaign officially began in 1993 with modest local efforts, subsequently expanding into a comprehensive, island-wide initiative that would span more than 2 decades. Japan's mongoose control strategy gained serious momentum in 2000 when the Environment Ministry launched a full-scale eradication project. Yet the most pivotal development came in 2005, following the enactment of the Invasive Alien Species Act, which officially designated mongooses as harmful invasive species. This legislation enabled the formation of a specialized team called the Amami Mongoose Busters. This professional group comprised local residents, ministry officials, and wildlife experts who shared a common mission: returning Amami Oshima Island to its natural state. As one team member, Watari Keita, explained, the mongoose busters worked under challenging conditions, often venturing deep into dangerous forest terrain amidst intense heat. Throughout the early years, the team operated with limited success. Initially, a buyback system was implemented from 1993 to 2005, encouraging local farmers to trap mongooses by providing financial incentives. This approach proved insufficient for comprehensive eradication, compelling authorities to develop a more systematic strategy. The eradication effort involved an unprecedented combination of methods. The mongoose busters placed and managed over 30,000 traps across almost all areas of Amami Oshima Island, including dense forests. They continuously improved trap designs to avoid capturing non-target species, particularly endemic birds. Also, more than 300 camera traps were installed at strategic locations, creating a sophisticated monitoring network that tracked mongoose movements. The team introduced specially trained mongoose detection dogs that could locate animals in areas inaccessible to humans. In the final phase, rodenticides were used in locations where other measures proved difficult to implement. The methodical approach evolved over time. Between 1983 and 2003, live traps were exclusively used for capturing mongooses. Starting in 2003, kill traps were introduced to improve efficiency. These traps underwent significant modifications in 2007 to reduce bycatch of endemic birds, including the addition of bird-excluding guards at trap entrances. In 2009, further refinements improved capture effectiveness while maintaining protection for non-target species. Coupled with these technological innovations, the team developed a coordinated system where detection dogs worked alongside handlers to locate and capture remaining mongooses in remote areas. The eradication effort witnessed several key milestones. The annual capture number peaked in 2000 at 3,884 individuals when the eradication project began. This figure gradually declined to 311 by 2010, indicating substantial progress. In essence, the comprehensive approach steadily reduced the mongoose population. Throughout the campaign, approximately 32,600 mongooses were captured in total. The last mongoose was caught in April 2018, marking a crucial turning point. After this final capture, an extensive monitoring period began. For more than 6 years, no mongooses were detected by traps, mongoose detection dogs, or camera traps installed at 579 locations across the island. This lengthy monitoring phase was critical to confirm eradication success. The Ministry of Environment commissioned detailed mathematical analyses to verify eradication status. These studies calculated eradication probabilities between 98.8% and 99.8%. Based on these findings, on September 3, 2024, the Environment Ministry officially declared the mongooses had been successfully eradicated from Amami Oshima Island. This declaration represented an extraordinary achievement in conservation history. It marked the first successful eradication of an established invasive mammal from an area as large as Amami Oshima, 712 square kilometers. The total cost of the 25-year eradication program reached approximately 3.5 billion yen, about $25 million. Environment Minister Ito Shintaro highlighted that tenacious efforts were key to the eradication. Indeed, the program's success stemmed from persistent dedication, scientific approach, and coordination between government agencies, researchers, and local communities. On February 7, 2025, the removal of all mongoose eradication traps on the island was completed, symbolizing the formal conclusion of the active eradication phase. Nonetheless, monitoring efforts continue to prevent potential reintroduction of invasive species. To the officials, it marked a neat, symbolic end to a campaign that had dragged on for decades. But here's where it gets interesting. While they proudly declared the active eradication phase complete, they couldn't quite pop the champagne. Why? Because even though the traps were gone, the fear wasn't. Monitoring teams are still on the ground, watching every shadow, scanning for the smallest sign that those relentless creatures might creep back and undo 25 years of blood, sweat, and billions spent. And this is where you really need to lean in. Because what comes next isn't just about mongoose, traps, or government reports. It's about the kind of mistake so big, so expensive, and so unbelievable that it turned into one of the boldest lessons in modern history. So don't go anywhere, because in the next few moments, we're diving straight into the lessons from a 25-year mistake. And trust me, you'll want to hear this all the way to the very end. Lessons from a 25-year mistake. Japan's mongoose eradication program stands as a powerful cautionary tale with implications reaching far beyond one island. The quarter-century struggle offers critical insights for conservation efforts worldwide. The mongoose introduction fundamentally failed because officials overlooked basic behavioral differences. Mongooses are diurnal, while habu snakes are nocturnal, resulting in minimal contact between the species. This single oversight cascaded into decades of ecological damage. Prior to introduction, no comprehensive assessment studied how these predators would interact with Amami Oshima's unique ecosystem. Scientists now emphasize that understanding species' natural history and basic demographics before introduction is essential. Without such preliminary information, even well-intentioned environmental interventions can spiral into disasters. As one expert noted, successful management depends on the ability to prevent control factors that cause the damage, rather than reacting to the damage after it occurs. Thorough research identifies potential ecological conflicts before they materialize, potentially saving billions in remediation costs. The financial burden of ecological restoration proved staggering. Japan invested approximately 3.5 billion yen, about $25 million over 25 years to eradicate the mongoose population. This figure represents just one small part of what experts call the restoration economy, valued globally at up to $9.5 billion annually. Beyond monetary costs, the ecological price was immeasurable. Thousands of work hours, deployment of 30,000 traps, and capturing 32,600 mongooses required unprecedented coordination. These expenses illustrate a principle environmental economists have long recognized. Addressing ecological problems after they occur costs substantially more than preventing them initially. As one study explained, cleaning up polluting plant usually involves either scrapping equipment before its due date or retrofitting it, making initial investment in prevention economically preferable. The Amami Oshima success represents a watershed moment in conservation. Environmental officials hailed it as a miracle, the first worldwide eradication of established invasive mammals from such a large island, 712 square kilometers. Remarkably, unlike other successful predator removals that primarily used poisoning, this project relied on trapping and detection methods. Following this achievement, Japan revised its National Invasive Alien Species Management Action Plan, incorporating lessons from Amami Oshima. The plan now includes comprehensive action guidelines for various entities, including government agencies, private organizations, researchers, and citizens. International experts recognize the significance of Japan's accomplishment. Dr. Piero Genovese, chair of the IUCN Invasive Species Specialist Group, called it a groundbreaking initiative that demonstrates how, with sufficient willpower, we can truly make progress in our efforts to conserve biodiversity. The Amami Oshima case proves that seemingly impossible conservation challenges can be overcome through persistence, scientific methodology, and community engagement. With this, we have come to the end of this video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do well to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. To enjoy more thrilling stories, click now on the following video that pops up on your screen.